Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. Today, I am joined by two very special guests. One of them is Rob, so he's not as special as
Special
the other
guest.
special guest, which is Clay. And you might recognize Clay from our Reinar Top 8 Canadian Nationals 2022 deck tech, where he came on with Ian. He top 8'd that with Reinar, with his, dare I say, innovative Reinar build. And we're bringing him back. He just played the Pro Tour calling in Baltimore, so we're recording this like 2 days after, so it's pretty fresh
Mhm.
here. And he decided to go Katsu, which is not Reinar. I know, hot takes, but it's gonna be a good deck tech regardless here. So Clay, welcome back. How was just very briefly? How was the PT calling experience, just in a general sense?
Pro Tour was incredibly stressful. Uh, my first round, I was paired against Florent Christian Logan, like Pro Tour 1 finalist, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Top 8 or so somewhere in the top 8. I don't remember where he landed, but yeah, it
And,
could be finalist for all I remember, honestly.
and my round 2 opponent was Pablo. And I was like,
This
Mr.
is like
Couture.
Pro Tour main event, right? Wasn't the
Yeah,
calling.
yeah,
Pro
this
Tour
was,
winner, yeah, the Pro Tour winner.
Yeah,
So
I
you
know,
got
but I mean,
two of the
this was
top
like
eights.
these were your matchups for Pro Tour main event.
so Pro Tour was very stressful for me. I went 4-3 in day 2, but I didn't think I could handle the stress of another day like that. So I dropped and played the calling instead.
Yeah,
And we
Yeah.
went 9-4 on that one, so I was very satisfied with my results.
hmm
yeah, that's a very good result because I want to remind all the viewers here. This is probably the biggest calling we've had ever.
In
I
terms of like
feel.
number of participants.
Yeah,
Was
it's
it
it's the
ever?
biggest major we've ever had. We've
Yeah,
had bigger like
yeah.
events.
Not like world premiere. I'm not talking about
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
yeah,
like yeah. I'm talking about like this is like a 800 plus person calling.
it
It's
was
eight
right.
Swiss.
950.
950.
All right,
Oh man.
950. So you got 8 Swiss day one, 5 Swiss day two. So
Yeah,
you're looking at
Yeah.
that's almost the same Swiss as a Pro Tour, and all of it's CC. So it's a lot of
Right. You
thinking.
don't get a break with some drafts. You gotta just pump it out just constantly with your main deck. So it's quite a lot. And I
a
guess that
couple of those
decision
games.
that decision to kind of go to the calling instead of continuing the pro tour, it's not an easy one because you make day two, which a lot of people would be pretty happy about, but then it's like I lose my chance at playing in the calling if I keep going with PT, right? So you got to really weigh it out.
Yeah, it's like that's Saturday, and then there's Sunday, and it's like if you wipe out on day 2 of the Pro Tour, you're there for like a
What are you gonna
full.
do on Sunday?
Yeah, it's like
Right,
I'm there
right.
with my friends,
Yeah.
and like playing the calling was a lot. It was a lot more fun, I think, than when I
Mm,
was playing a Worlds and trying to like battle out in the main event.
yeah, that's fair.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Congrats. I think top 50. I want to say in the calling. Somewhere
I
around
placed 56.
top
Nice.
56. We'll edit that in top 64. That's a
Yeah,
Right.
bracket.
Right. That's the break
That's a
point.
bracket. That's a bracket right there. So out
hmm
of eight, over 950 people. So congratulations on all that juicy elo.
yeah.
And
Thank you.
we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about the deck here. So I just very briefly. Everyone knows he was a Reinhardt player. Any particular reason you're jumping on the ninja train
It's because Katsu's
for this
sick.
event? Kakatsu's sick. Okay.
Uh, Katsu is the most fun I've had playing Flesh and Blood. I was like a WTR draft in February. Um, I mostly played like Bravo and Dorinthia, but I tried Katsu for the first time, and it was it was just like nothing I'd played in Flesh and Blood. Um,
Are you
and then I
talking this past February, or are you talking like way
yeah,
back?
yeah, yeah. This past February, I
Oh,
just a regular
2023.
WTR draft,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
and I just started brewing with the cards we had at that time, which was just WTR cards. And the deck wasn't very good, but it was very fun.
Right.
And then the new cards got spoiled, and I just got straight to work.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. So I guess let's jump right into the deck here. So I kind of want to start off with the main core slash sideboard, just like in totality. But let's start with the core. Kind of break down anything that you think is particularly noteworthy in the core that maybe is not as like obvious or maybe like particular big upgrades as far as damage potential, maybe a couple of like main lines that you do. Essentially, that's your, bread and butter for someone who wants to pick up this deck and play it, what they should really be looking at as a core part of the deck.
So, one notable exclusion from the deck that I've been seeing in other lists is Snatch and
Mm.
Art of War.
Yeah.
Snatch, I think, is a really good card. The problem is the way I like to play Katsu, I arsenal pretty aggressively. Like I'm trying to set up certain turns. Like if I have a 100 winds or a spinning wheel kick, I'm never just turning that into damage. I'm waiting for an opportunity where I can get a mask trigger or a Katsu trigger.
Mm.
So I don't ever just want to just play it out for just damage. So
Right.
then I'll have these situations like I just have to play these cards I don't really want to, because otherwise, like the card I draw off Snatch is just going to go to waste. And of course, you got Snapdragon Scalers, but that's like a once per game thing.
Hmm.
Uh, Essentially, it didn't really fit into the kind of game I wanted to play.
Okay.
So in terms of what I replaced that with, I guess I just made more room in the board for
Hmm. Maybe a
other
few
kinds of
more.
strategies.
Yeah, a few more picks against certain heroes, maybe.
Yeah. I think in terms of like the core 50 cards, it's I don't think there are any surprises in here.
No, that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Especially like talking like about the main upgrades here, the surging line with Bond's Descendant, regular stuff.
Yeah.
Be like Water, another new one. Dishonor, obviously. Concealed Blade is an interesting card. I actually quite like it. Just like another trick, another +1 trick, and then it's just a block 3 blue, as opposed to like just another blue 2 power attack, like a, I don't know, rushing river or whatever, right? Which is kind
Hmm.
of what it used to be. Um, how did it kind of like that? That's the reason I like it. Is there any particular reason that you thought it fit more in this deck rather than just another attack that I've been seeing in other lists?
So my philosophy with blues is I always want them to do more than one thing. Like blues that block 3, like Katsu's rotten with them. And it's like what happens when we're staring at a hand with like more blues than we know what to use, and we're just going to arsenal one of them. And it's like most of these are not thrilling arsenal targets. So Concealed Blade is kind of it offers more utility. Uh,
Yeah.
be like Water is like a really um, important card, and people will just always block. They'll just snap block 3 because it's not worth the risk of letting it hit. And just having like an extra 3 combat tricks to push it over the top can really blow people out. And with comparing it to Ancestral Empowerment, you're not getting the card draw. However, if you're doing your like Kodachi swings first and then doing it, you're getting your mass trigger, so it's like kind of the same thing. Um, yeah, it came up a couple times, but it's not something like I'm not looking at my hands like, oh, sick, I've got a Concealed Blade that
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
can play this hand. It's like, okay, this is an extra blue I can't find a function for. I'm happy that it's not just like another 2 attack.
Yep.
That's fair.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll pass it off to Rob to kind of
Yeah, I
for the
can. I guess
sideboard
I was kind
portion.
of curious about maybe the equipment. Maybe we can talk specifically about what equipment you run, and then which matchups certain sideboard pieces come in.
Yeah, so I think the most divisive choice here was Findle Spring Tunic over Heart and Crossstrap. Heart and Crossstrap's just not in the list.
Hmm.
Now, I will not say that Tunic is just the better card, but I have like personal philosophy over what a chess slot should be doing,
Mm.
and Crossstrap isn't really doing enough. So when I was playing my Rhinar list, I was really championing Heart and Crossstrap because it would let you swing like a 5 power Mandible Claw when you otherwise couldn't afford it. So that Crossstrap represented 5 damage. Here, using Crossstrap to play your Surging Strike, it's like there's no multiplying factor. It's literally just 2 resources. It's like this is saving you a card that you would otherwise need to pitch for it. Like, let's say, like, we're looking at our hand of 4 cards, and it's like, okay, we get to block with an extra card to play Heart and Cross Strap. Then you might say, okay, well, what if you're red bricked? And it's like, we don't want to pitch 2 reds, play a Surging Strike. Well, we can just use the Tunic counter and pitch a red. That's fine. That's just, like, on comparing to pitching a blue, like, you're just losing out on your Kodachis.
Right.
So then you have the like the third part was like, okay, well, let's just really compress our hands for the aggro mirrors or for Heart and Cross Strap. I think one of Katsu's strengths is how much agency he has to drawing out a game. If we're in an aggro mirror and I lose the die roll, there's no way I can win that race. What I need to do is block until they stumble and I can get in there. And Tunic lets me accrue value over the course of the game and apply pressure with Kodachis that I otherwise couldn't afford to threaten mask triggers.
Yep.
It lets me unbrick more hands. They only ever get to unbrick 1 hand. I can unbrick like as many as I get counters.
Exactly. And you were talking about the deck being more like you set up your 5-card hands, you go for like opportune moments to really get in there, and the Tunic allows you to do that more than once, right? Because the cross strap, it's a 1-turn pop off. Combo decks like it. Reinar likes it when he gets his really big turns, but if you're kind of waiting for like a few opportune moments, I think Tunic makes a lot of sense to me.
There is also another really important reason that I like it over Heart and Cross Strap. Tunic's activation is instant, where Heart and Cross Strap is an action.
That's right.
That means if you do not start your turn by breaking the chain or by activating it, you have to break the chain. So let's say a very common play pattern for the deck is I want to go like spinning wheel kick to get my Katsu trigger so I don't know what's coming, and then I'll go Surging Strike XYZ.
Yep.
If I do spinning wheel kick first and then activate Heart and Cross Strap, I break the chain, which is giving up mask trigger or like breaking up my mask chain. God forbid you have to do it after using Bonds of Ancestry, because Bonds of Ancestry requires you to play the card on that chain. If you have to use Heart and Cross Strap to break it, that card just dies. It just it's disastrous.
Yep.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That's not to say that it is that Tunic is better than Heart and Cross Strap. I just think it is more flexible and suits the way I like to play the game better.
It suits this play pattern a lot more. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I see a few pieces in the sideboard. There's the Vambrace, as well as Tide Flippers and Snapdragons. Maybe we can talk about Vambrace versus your Bracers. So when does the Vambrace come in?
So the Vambrace comes in only for Ultim.
Okay. I assumed, but I didn't want to.
Respect.
Yeah. Breaking Sails is incredible. It's like I cannot imagine an arm slot that I would rather have under any other context.
Right.
But against Ultim, Vambrace is like your third Kodachi.
Right,
It just like allows you to stretch your resources further in order to put more pressure on his hand on a turn-to-turn basis. I think the way you want to approach the Ultim matchup is to force him to give up 2 cards every turn so he can't be disrupting you. And using Vambrace lets you do that without exhausting too many threats from your deck.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. We can move on to the actual sideboard now and see kind of where certain cards fit in terms of this meta and in terms of like which opponents you see. So I'm just going to pick and choose some cards here. Maybe you could fill in the gaps. So CNC, when do you play that card?
CNC is primarily, exclusively for Rangers.
Okay.
They are going to be sending a lot of damage at me and demanding a lot of cards from hand if they're Lexi, or they're going to be throwing Red and Ledger at me and leave me with only 1 action point. CNC kind of allows, like, against Lexi, force them to pump the brakes. They're not getting as many like multiplying factors on their Rain Razor's turns. Lets us get back in the game and start threatening mass triggers again. Against Azalea, it's a way to just use more cards, because that's the way we lose against Azalea. It's the fact that when they hit us with the Red and the Ledger, we're sitting on all these cards we can't convert. We're falling too many cards behind. So Command and Conquer like tries to help offset that.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. there are some combo pieces here that I'm sad to see in the sideboard. I'm wondering, Mugenshi release, I guess, not as easy to get off in that one for that combo piece.
Yeah, so Magenshi release has a very specific function
Hmm.
whenever I think a game is going to go to fatigue.
Okay.
I think the actual combo line, like going from Surging Strike to Gust Wave to Magenshi, is sick, but your opponent really has to be like a consenting individual to let that hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I have one Magenshi release because I want to resolve it once per game, where there's no interaction from my opponent, and it's guaranteed to get maximum value.
Gotcha.
Basically, the plan to like loop in most of the sideboard, the rest of the sideboard, we bring in Energy Potion and Snapdragon Scaler. Snaps are only for this Magenshi release.
Gotcha.
What we're going to do once we've bought ourselves enough room, and our deck is like down to its last 5 or 10 cards, we're going to play out the Energy Potion. We're going to have our Tunic charged up, and then we're just going to open with a 5 card hand, Magenshi release, and then we'll snaps it, and then we will just naturally play the Lord of Wind for like 11. And then we're just going to shuffle all of our Surging Strikes or Whelming Gust Waves back into the deck, and we're just going to try and bury them in the end game.
Okay, gotcha. And this is you mentioned this is to combat fatigue, right?
Yes, it is. It's a little damage expensive. Like, you have, like, on that last turn, you have to keep a full 5 card hand,
Right.
or it's a lot less good. So you kind of need to be comfortable just taking
Taking
whatever
a
they can
turn
throw
off.
in that fatigue state. Yeah,
Yeah,
precisely.
yeah. Awesome.
But if that ever gets off, like, the game is just over. They're on life support for the rest of the game.
Right, right. So we're talking mainly against Oldhim's, probably.
Yeah, I actually bring it in against Dromai too
Okay.
because if Dromai has a particularly defensive build, they can really run me out of damage.
I see. Yeah.
Uh, and like the great thing about this board is it's super low opportunity cost. Like I'm adding in only like 2 cards into my 60 to shut
Mm.
down, like just getting like punked out by an unexpected defensive strategy.
Right, right. Yeah, it's actually a pretty easy investment to make for this deck, and good on its own too. Even if you draw them at times where you don't really want them, they're still fine cards.
Yeah,
Easy to pitch. Just throw them for later. Yeah.
and because like Magenshi is just an on-grade attack, like I can use
Right.
it to attack and then put it back into my deck with Visit the Floating Dojo.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, very very low kind of very very cheap cards to add to your deck in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely.
Awesome. How about Eric? Do you have any questions about this sideboard? Anything that
Yeah, I see the
tickles
red.
your
I mean,
fancy as a
I see the red hurl. You see the red hurl.
yeah,
The
I was
viewers see the red
you
hurl.
can ask the question.
I mean, yeah, you can. Honestly, I'd like to know if you hurled a Kadachi, you can concealed blade to get another Kadachi that's not in the board here. This mysterious third token Kadachi. No, I'm just kidding. But like realistically here, where's that hurl coming in?
So when I'm playing against decks that run Codex of Frailty, what can happen a lot of the time is that I'm trading my life to get like be in the driver's seat, the tempo, quote unquote. And I'll go to like a pretty low life total, and then I'm just in the driver's seat for the rest of the game, and then I'll get them down to 1. We get like the Kodachi lock. The problem is Codex of Frailty lets them block away their entire hand, play the Codex, and prevent me from attacking with my Kodachis.
Mm-hmm.
It just like it's a 1 card get out of jail free, which is like absolutely devastating considering how much life I trade away to create that situation.
Right.
So Hurl is kind of like my cheeky little, oh, you think you can Codex me at 1? I return Hurl to my arsenal and I just kill you.
Right.
It didn't come up at
Darn.
either of the events, but
The theory.
it did
Yeah.
create a situation. The Alexi that I was playing against saw the hurl in my discard and started blocking my Kodachi's whole hog when they went to 2.
Thought you had like 2 or 3. Yeah, just the scare tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like whenever they give me a full card to block a Kodachi, that's like a huge value win.
Yeah.
So like that worked quite well for me. And the opportunity cost is super low because it's a head jab. Head jabs are great. I love head jabs.
Head jabs are great. Okay, that kind of makes sense for me. I think we're gonna go over to the I guess the evolution part. So if there's anything you'd like to change based on your experience at the calling, the PT, any of the CC games, things you've learned that you would change in either the core or the side or whatever. Again, obviously, we don't know what the net. I mean, Nat's meta. There's going to be a new set. We ignore that. Just like assuming you know what you knew now about the current meta for like like if you're playing this deck at a Road CC event, like a Road to National CC event, what would you do to this deck?
I would. Let's see here.
If anything,
there are things I would definitely try. Like the problem was like I just didn't have enough time. Like, I mean, I had 2 months designing the deck, but I don't exactly have the resources of a testing team at my disposal. So a lot of things just kind of get left on the chopping block.
Yep.
One of the things I would like to get more combo cards into the deck because, like, I think my current build has about 31 or so. And in those aggro mirrors, getting the bonus defense on my combo cards from Flick Flack is game winning in a lot of these situations. So that might mean trimming Concealed Blades to make more room for Lord of Winds. It might be pushing around like the E-Strike numbers. E-Strike's like an amazing card in the deck, but it does anti-synergize with when I'm on the back foot. So maybe if that means I'm boarding in more combo cards, I'm not certain.
Right.
I would consider cutting Command and Conquer. It's very good, but it's also not a zero cost, and that sometimes gets me in trouble. I'm like below I'm a little bit below the golden ratio of zero cost cards in the deck. I think I'm like 44 in those matchups. I kind of want to get to like 45, 46, like,
right.
And that's like really tight when you consider like your bonds, your Distant Gust, your Searching Strikes.
Sure.
Otherwise, the scars were quite underwhelming. Kind of as my last decision I made on the deck, like 2 days before PT, were Soul Beat Strikes, and the Soul Beat Strikes were so good they replaced Scar for every matchup. And the times where scars were coming in, it's like, well, I've got 2 cards left to submit 60, so I have like scars are pretty safe.
Yeah.
So what I would want to do is make better use of that sideboard space. And I might want to interrogate my fatigue matchup a bit closer because, going up against Pablo, going up against, I played another very good old him at the calling. They did not give me the space to set that strategy up.
Okay.
And I died. Yeah. And I died for that.
Right. No, you mean the Mugenshi strat?
Yeah.
E-pot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Is it maybe you think bringing in more Mugenshi / Lord of Winds would have helped just to get it like a little bit, because you've got like the one Mugenshi and you're kind of you're kind of sitting on that later in the game. You kind of you're sitting on it and then you're like popping the Lord of Wind. Would that help at all or no?
I'm not sure because again they do have to. I don't want to say this. Mugenshi needs something to give it go again unless you want to pursue the full combo line, which means you need some kind of support card. I'm using Snaps. I've seen other lists using Time Snap Potion.
Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, you need to like invest the whole combo line, and it's so telegraphed. They know it's like, okay, the only way he wins here is if I let Mugenshi hit. So it's like, okay, like we can afford to give up some damage so he draws a card off of like one Gust Wave.
Right. And you mentioned what made that combo so good near the end of the game was that it was basically unblockable, right? It was at a point where they couldn't, they had to let something through, right?
Yeah, it's like Oldhim can ice react the Mugenshi to put another blue on top of my deck, but it means I'm only putting 8 cards back in my deck instead of 11.
Okay, which is still fine.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So you kind of already started on that train as far as underperform, overperform, because you mentioned Scars underperforming.
Sure, yeah.
Soul Beads overperforming. I mean, I quite like Soul Beads myself. I'm not a super big Scar guy. But as far as I think you already mentioned CNC Mugenshi. I think you pretty much almost mentioned everything. You got the yellow bonds in there.
That's true. Yeah.
Curious about just an extra bonds just to.
Yeah, so
More
my
consistent.
actual skeleton's 50 cards. So when I'm just like bringing in 3 card packages, I usually have 1 card left over. Like
Oh, okay.
bonds, it's just like a bit of extra density.
It's
Like
a nice filler there. Okay,
yeah.
no, that makes sense. Um, okay. I think we didn't really touch on it. Why you're kind of starting on the breeze riders, I guess, in your core, because I think
Mm,
most, if not all, Katsu decks that I've seen either have breeze in the side or they don't
Mm,
run breeze at all.
that's a good
But
point.
you have it in kind of like the main deck, and you're bringing in snaps as really your like contingency for other cards that need like Mugenshi, right? You're not really needed because you got a E strike, you're not running snatch, so it's not as many targets for like immense value other than E strike and snatch as far as your generic cards. So any reason for like breeze riders just sitting there in the core other than like snaps just being not as good, I guess, in your deck?
Um, Snaps is very good. I value the point of armor very highly.
Mm,
Like there are like on hits that are coming out, like out of Lexi and other Katsus and Uzuri and all that. Um, that it's having that point of armor can like represent a whole extra card in a lot of situations.
Mhm.
With regards to the go again, like how you need to actually get the attack to hit,
Yeah.
there are like a couple interesting implications that make it like kind of a side grade to snaps in that regard.
mm,
Um, because it's looking for any ninja card to hit in order to give all your combo cards go again. So if you lead off with your leg tap and it hits, it's like, okay, well, I'm looking at my Whelming Gust Wave and Descending Gust Wave. I can just activate Breeze Rider now to give my Whelming Gust Wave go again. So in that way, it does kind of function like snaps. It gives me more agency setting up double bonds turns because what you can do is you can go Whelming Gust Wave bonds, Whelming Gust Wave bonds, because neither of those have go again if you don't have the Surging Strike.
mm,
So you don't have to, like, you're getting more go again value out of that.
Mhm.
Also, the fact that it is a hit trigger means that you can wait until after you've resolved Mask of Momentum to see what you get. And it's like,
And
mm,
decide.
oh,
Yeah.
I drew the 0 cost card. I need to discard to combo for Katsu.
mm-hmm.
I need this go again. Activate Breeze Rider Boots. With
Okay, yeah.
snaps, it's committal, and you might just brick yourself. So it can let you play with like narrower margins.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, no, that
Um,
makes sense.
and then also you have breaking skills, so it's like when you really need to resolve Breeze Rider Boots, it's a lot more difficult for them to just straight up deny you that. It's like if you play like open whelming gust wave and you just have like a bond in your hand, it's like if they have to shove like 4 or 5 in front of it to stop your turn, like that's a fine transaction. Like you're getting more than the card that you played.
Hmm.
Sure. Okay. No, that totally makes sense. Especially the point of armor. I think, especially in
Yeah,
this meta, particularly,
yeah.
all
You
the
got
top. I
Endless
mean, it
Arrows, a killer, right?
maybe
So
not so much. Maybe not so much Stromae, but like more so
Yeah,
Lexi, Oldhim. These decks hurt if you don't if you don't have
yeah.
blocking prowess here. So it definitely does make sense. And Azalea in a pinch here. So same kind of idea. But
True.
I think the last thing we wanted to kind of go over is really just like match it. Not every single. There's a lot of heroes. Like I don't want to know your Riptide
This is gonna
sideboard,
get
right? But
longer
like
and
we want.
longer the more we do this, the more heroes come out,
Well,
right?
no, because if they start to LL out like they should be,
Yeah, that we get
should
more heroes that come out that
Oldham and
they're getting
Briar,
LL'd out.
Oldham and Briar should be there soon. Well,
Yeah,
Briar
yeah.
should be gone by now, but that's fine. So we have like I want to go over kind of the major ones first. So we got our the one that was all of the representation in top eight? I think it's pretty much all of them, right? It was Lexi, Oldham,
Lexi,
Dromai, just pretty much
Oldham.
making up
Yeah,
the entirety of top eight, right? In PT, not in
one Azalea too, I believe.
yeah.
we
There was
had.
one Azalea too.
Oh yeah, that I think
That was a PT, right?
got boomed by Oldham round one, I imagine, or
Yeah.
so. So you didn't hit the Lexi that he wanted, but let's just talk about those three first, and
Sure.
then I think let's start with Oldham because you've kind of already kind of alluded
Yeah.
to it earlier, so I think it'll be quicker just to rehash. You mentioned that the the plan against fatigue. You got your Mugenshi, you got your Epod in there. Do you have any kind of hedge for mid range? And this is a bit of a weird question because I think there was a lot of both at PT
Yeah.
the calling. You didn't really know. Did you have kind of like a hedge strategy that you can kind of go into if you don't know their list or you don't have any kind of scouting information or anything like that?
I just run the sideboard into both and kind of trust there is a risk involved. Like I'm going up from 1 null block to 3, which can going up to 4 null blocks, which can get you into trouble against Oldham. But most of the time, if they're going mid range, they are showing Stalagmite instead of Rampart, which makes the end game a lot more favored for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's riskier. It is absolutely more unstable, but I would still consider it on balance a favored matchup.
Right.
Sure.
And your
And that's
main
pretty
issue
good.
was really going into fatigue. So, if you are against a mid-range Oldhim, you have the tools, I think, to go head to toe, or head to head, I should say, against
Yeah.
a strategy
Head to
like
toe
that.
also.
Yeah, head to toe also. Yeah.
Yeah, I did lose to the one middle range Oldhim I played against, but I don't think I can blame my deck, my deck choices for that. It was just like we draw too many red brick hands.
Okay.
As
yeah, it happens.
Oldhim is like better at punishing stumbles than like any deck
Right.
that you
Yep.
can see in the meta right
Right.
now.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fair. So we just see the basic kind of you're siding in visits, you're siding in Epot and Genshi.
Maybe some sinks.
1, 2, 3, 4. Are you going to the straight 60?
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with 60 cards into Oldhim.
Right. Okay. So I guess Sinks Flick.
Let's see. I have my sideboard guy's a little outdated here.
Just my. I mean, I don't think you're bringing CNC or Hurl or Snatch.
That's
or
fair. Yeah.
Soulbead. Could be wrong. Maybe Soulbead comes in because 3 block. I don't think Soulbead ever hits in that matchup, but I don't really know.
Yeah. So I'm. It's fine. It doesn't need to hit. I'm just putting in like cards that block well, cards that attack on rate. Soul Beat Strike. It's just a wounding blow, but that's fine. Yeah, bringing in CNCs just have more damage in the deck. Let's see, what else is of note? We're going up to 3 floating dojos. So that's the thing. Like, I have 1 floating dojo in the main. That's like a compromise. I don't like boarding in blues just for like minor upgrades and card quality. So it's just a consequence of how I construct my decks. But I go up to 3 for Oldhim because it's like very important.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
And as far as your game plan, I think you also alluded to this.
Yeah. So basically, I want to make sure that he's never starting a turn with more than 2 cards. So I'm going to be playing like pretty aggressively and taking. I'm taking damage unless I have like literally a blue I can't use. And then we're going to get down to like the last 10 cards or so. If he's been keeping 2-card hands this whole time, then I should have like a decent enough life total where I can like set up my fatigue plan.
Sure.
Otherwise, if he's playing mid-range and he's taking damage, and we're getting like the scrappy like 1 to 2 life threshold, like that's all I want. I just want like every Kodachi to like be like buying cards from his hand,
Yeah.
buying cards from his deck. Yeah.
I noticed you didn't have the roundhouse kick in the list.
Oh no.
Kick this rampart out of space here. Any reason you just did have the slot, I guess, or something like that? It wasn't. They weren't. They were playing around it by like block it with Ironhide too, or something like that. I imagine.
Yeah. So I find that card very hard to use in practice. Because like a lot of things have to happen in order for you to get the shield. Firstly, you have to get them to use the shield, which means you want to be swinging your Kodachis. Well, he's also got Crown Seed, so you can swing both your Kodachis. Then you need your Cyclone Roundhouse or your Spinning Wheel Kick. And then, like, there's no way he's letting Spinning Wheel Kick hit because that's his job to not let these things hit for free. So you're not getting your Katsu Tutor to get the Cyclone Roundhouse. So now you also have to have the Cyclone Roundhouse in your hand. So you need to naturally have both of those cards. That's 3 resources. You need to swing both of your Kodachis. That's 5 resources. And you need the cards to play that. So you need, like, at a minimum, 2 blues and those cards to do that. It's like it's a lot of work to set that up. And it was like I was kind of like humming and hawing on whether I should be engaging with the strategy. And then like Charles Dunn goes on the AGE stream and he's like, oh yeah, I just always pair my shield with Ironhide boots and don't pay the cost. And it's like, now the best I can hope for with this strategy is that I have a 50% chance of banishing a shield. It's like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Big brain for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So that was old him. Let's move on to Lexi, because this was what, 4 of them in top 8, something like that. So definitely the most represented deck and PT and the calling.
Yeah,
that match.
And
so
the highest head count of people running her, I think.
Yeah,
she was the highest representation. Yeah,
highest in both.
So that matchup plays very differently depending on who wins the die roll. Basically, if I win the die roll, like it's kind of game plan as usual, sort of, where I'm just trying to threaten mask as much as possible, hopefully buy cards out of her hand, or make it really expensive for her to keep a whole hand. One thing I do is I'm very disciplined with how I choose to block, because Tar Pit Trap is a monster for this deck. Like, if I have like a hand of 2 blues in my hand, I was like, okay, I need a Katsu trigger, and I want to threaten my mask trigger. Any other things, like if I go like Be Like Water and she Tar Pit Traps it, like my turn's over. Like I just exploded. I took so much damage for nothing. So it does change like the hands that you want to keep. If I lose the die roll and like they're going second, I'm really under the gun. They're going to be throwing like tons of damage at me, and no hand that I can keep is going to really outweigh the amount of damage that's going to be coming at me. So I'm going to be playing very defensively. I'm going to trade all my armor to cover on hits. I'm going to be using lots of flick flacks, blocking away a lot. Eventually, they have a turn that is just like fair damage, and that will be like, okay, now I have permission to get into the game, and those games can like really slip away from them.
Do you change your sideboard depending on the roll, or no?
It's not really something I mess around with too much.
Okay.
Because like the way matchups go, you can have the plan where it's like, I'm always going to be attacking. But it's like, okay, we stumble once, now we're defending. And it's like, okay, we have this offensive package, and the game plan kind of crumbles. It's like the shoe can be on the other foot, like in one turn.
Right.
So I want to make sure that these are cards that I am happy playing on both sides.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
In terms of the actual cards, skip that. I'm running the Flick Flacks, the Sinks, the Soul Beat Strikes. Sorry. The Flick Flacks, the Sinks, Command and Conquer, and the Hurl.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's pretty tight for that. Kind of definitely makes sense. None of the other cards seem remotely as useful for Lexi compared to those. So that was Lexi, Oldhim, Dromai popped up. 2 of them. Very different builds too. So let's just I know you have a Dromai side. Obviously these 2 Dromai decks. It's kind of the same as mid-range and Fatigue Oldhim. Like they do different things, but their core they still have a lot of similar cards. Like they both have dragons, for instance. Like you're gonna be running into some kind of dragon, right? So what's the idea versus Dromai?
Versus Dromai, it is a very favorite matchup for me.
Yeah.
I played 1 Dromai and I was disappointed there weren't more, to be perfectly honest.
Jen you weren't that favored with Jen.
Yeah. Some things can go wrong for the match. They can absolutely complicate things. An early Tumultai killing Mask makes it a lot more expensive for me to kill dragons. What else usually goes wrong? I mentioned if they go very defensive, I can just like run out of threats. So I just account for that by having my like Oldhim Fatigue sideboard in there, because it's very low opportunity cost. If I'm already heavily favored, I'm sacrificing like small percentage points in order to hedge against that.
Sure.
And it's just like being proactive with controlling the board without sacrificing too much damage. Like if if they have 3 Ashwings out, I'm not going to say like, oh, Kodachi, and then throw like my surging strike at the dragon to get a mass
Right.
trigger or something like that. And it's
Okay.
like, no, the surging strike is going upstairs. I'm making them block. I'm like devaluing their turn going forward so they have less room to set up dragons that I'll just have to kill again next turn.
Right.
So it's like I look at those dragons as extra health that Dromai has. And it's like, okay, I still need to use my damage efficiently so that I'm not like throwing like 3 or 4 points of damage
Right.
on those dragons.
That makes
Right.
sense. Yeah,
Hmm.
because she'll be blocking the surging to face, hopefully, anyway. So you're stripping cards
Yeah.
away from hand. She can't play as many dragons the next turn, and you'll just deal with the Ashwing in a single Kodachi. Right, next time.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes sense. So cards you're bringing in for that matchup.
Yeah. So we're bringing the CNCs because Poppers, it's just a time walk against her. What else is coming in?
Soul
So
Beads, I imagine.
yeah, Soul Beads, like very low opportunity cost if we ever need to go again. If
Yep.
we're just spoiled for sources.
Mhm.
And then the anti fatigue, so the dojos, the Magenshi, the potion.
Yep.
No, the potion's not coming in. It's the extra bonds because those games can go pretty long.
Bonds,
So having a fourth bonds resolution can really smooth things out.
Hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. The last one
guess
that we kind of
Azalea, if you want to talk about Azalea.
yeah, Azalea being the there was one Azalea obviously in top 8. Azalea did pop up as a top
Yeah.
4-ish deck,
Yeah.
pseudo top 4, especially in PT representation. I think it was 4 or 5, something along those lines.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe it wasn't that high, but I remember seeing a bunch earlier on. So what's the Azalea strat?
The Azalea strat is ask James like
Yeah.
really nicely that you don't run one dragon. I very pleased the way the meta shook out that there weren't as many Azaleas as what we were led to believe
Right.
with that first major after Outsiders dropped.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was originally teched very heavily into Azalea. I had some wild stuff. Like Reinforced Lions, they're seeing some play still, but
Right.
I had the third Kodachi for my Concealed Blade.
Oh.
Because like what
I
they'll
knew it.
do is they'll melting point destroy your Kodachi, and it's like my my end game strategy just fell apart. Thank God that they're there. There weren't so many of them now, so that I can like actually use that on like that third Kodachi on relevant sideboard space. But in terms of like the actual game plan, it's going to be very similar to Lexi, because like even though the D reacts aren't necessarily covering breakpoints because she's just going to pump them to the stratosphere,
Right.
there are ways for me to use the cards in my hand effectively when she dominates.
Right.
Like a D react coming out of Arsenal, plus like an E strike. So like I'll block from hand, D react from Arsenal, and Lightning Strike. I'm using 4 cards because what kills you against Azalea isn't red in the ledger. Like having your turn stop sucks. It's the fact that you're drawing less cards because you can't actually use your whole hand.
Right.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So in this particular build, the one you brought, what was the sideboard you ended up bringing if you did see any Azaleas?
It was basically identical to Lexi. It was the CNCs, the D reacts, and Hurl, so they can't wriggle out of the Kodachi lock with Codex.
Right.
Right. That makes sense. Did you end up seeing any Azaleas?
No.
We got there.
Thanks, Jam.
We made it.
It's a
Thank
funny
God for
timeline
Jam.
that we're like kind of concerned about Azaleas now. It's like they have a strategy against Azalea. In the past, would be
The
like
Ranger
no.
used to be a dumpster fire, but
Yeah.
Look at me now, Codex of Frailty.
Interesting times. Yeah, yeah. I love how James White was like that card was not a mistake. You gotta give like Ranger some love.
Now everyone gets a knock the death whistle or whatever. Everybody gets knocked the death whistle.
Mhm.
You get knocked the death whistle. But
Sure.
okay, that kind of makes sense. We did have a couple other matchups that on the list that were pretty, or I guess like the next kind of tier that may have been represented. I kind of avoided dash because I thought that would just be like you just run over dash. So I kind of
Yeah.
just took that aside. I don't think the
Traditionally pretty
sideboard for the plan.
Sure.
Oh yeah, I think you just like eliminate unless they're on like heavy turtle, like, and then you're just like playing the fatigue, and it's just like okay, but
Right.
it's fatigue, but they don't do anything, so it's just like eventually you just win. I think.
I did play one draft dash at the calling, and they got me, but a lot went wrong. I lost the die
Okay.
roll.
Right. I had you. I was giving you all the credit, and then you're just like,
Yeah, I mean, I could just nod like, yeah, we killed all the dashes. And it's like,
yeah,
no, that dash fight that got me, he'll see this and he won't be happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he won on a super narrow margin. It was like very tight, well played game. It's just like over such a long 20 games, like a massive sample. The deck sometimes just breaks. Like
Right.
yeah. You,
Right.
you just it was more like your deck just didn't want to cooperate rather than the matchup was horribly wrong. But it happens. You run a
yeah,
lot of reds. You're not playing Oldhim where you can do everything with everything, right?
yeah.
You're an aggro deck, so you gotta draw the cards. But the other matchups I was kind of thinking about was Bravo and Dory. Is
Mm.
welcome to Wraith compatriots here.
Yeah.
We're kind of
Reiner.
ignoring Reiner. I think Reiner also folds, honestly. So I'm just kind of ignoring
Yeah.
Reiner into like heavy aggro. It's not fun for Reiner.
Sp-
So
Spare me the shame of having to talk about Reinhardt.
I'm
Yeah.
not talking.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
even bringing him up. Let's go with Dory Bravo because those matchups have always been
yeah,
kind of interesting.
yeah.
So I don't know which one you want to start with first. It doesn't really matter.
Let's go with Bravo.
Sure.
I saw two Bravo total between the two events. Um, Bravo can look like a really spooky matchup because what's going to happen is you're going to start off the game and you're going to go like Surging Strike, and he will be 3 block plus like a piece of armor, and then you'll go well, like I had it all the time, idiot, and he'll go like his boots and the 3 block is like I don't know what to do anymore because you just covered all my attacks. And that's going to happen for a couple turns where you just need to account like he's not going to let anything hit. He's going to swing back whatever you have left over. Your health is going to melt for a couple turns. I've had situations where he was at like 37 and I was like 25 something, 25, 23, like massive, like pretty ugly deficits.
Mhm.
And then his armor runs out, and then he explodes.
Mm.
Sure.
Like the whole point of this deck is to tax armor really heavily, and then once they're out of armor, start taxing their cards really heavily. And once you start like buying, like once Bravo has to give you his first card, he can't dominate Crippling Crush anymore. Once he gives you his second card, he can't throw spinals at you.
Yeah.
And then it's like it gets worse and worse and worse as you ask for more and more from him. And then like he's just swinging Athos every turn for like 4 or 6, and you're doing so much more damage to him.
Right. That's a very good piece of advice, actually. To not be discouraged if you're playing against Bravo and see your life total start to dwindle, like you said, be the low 20s versus high 30s, because the armor blocks the on hits, and that's kind of where you get most of your value from. So if they're just giving you their armor, you're not getting your on hits. Okay, you're kind of playing a subpar deck at that point. But once they're gone, basically it's open season, right? You just kind of get cards from hand, get hits off, get your combos, and you're gonna quickly catch up in life total.
It's way too expensive to block this deck out without armor.
Yeah.
Actual sideboard, all the D reacts, obviously, like you don't want a Crippling Crush to just like end the game for you. I think what did we have here? We got Soul Beat Strikes, so they block well, and Bonds of Ancestry because they're just going to be asking for blocks at certain points. You don't want to just like be forced to choose between blocking all your win condition or like not getting spined.
Sure. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so that was the first one. Let's go with Dory. A little bit of a lot of armor, but different kind of game plan on Dory.
Yeah, so I was extremely fortunate to have the pleasure to meet Josh Lau at the Pro Tour. He was my round 4 opponent, and I won that game. But it's really thanks to how well this deck blocks when it needs to. Because, like, by Dorinthia matchup theory, is like you just trade hands back and forth, do as much damage as you can, and then that Dawnblade is going to hit like the 3 or 4 counterpoint, and it's like, okay, now you have to like pump the brakes and reset because their damage per turn will overtake you. If they have like any combat trick on that turn, or there are 2 combat tricks, like Singing Steel Blade or something, Fi just explodes. With Katsu, this deck is really defensive. We have 60 reacts. I have a lot more agency when you kind of hit that like critical break point where the counters need to be reset.
Interesting. Is that common to as a Katsu player just let Dorinthia accumulate her counters and then at like seven damage on a Dawn Blade, then you just block it out and reset her?
It depends on how the hands shake out.
Right.
Because I'm not going to have a sink in my hand and say I'm discarding Stakatsu. It's like, no, I know that
Okay.
like if she took a full hand and I like block 6 on her attack and then you sink below, like she is drawing less cards because like she's still gonna have like 2 cards left over in her hand or more. Um, and and she took damage to set up that hand. So like I'm still accumulating a life lead. Um, Eventually it gets to a point where it's like now I have permission to turn on the gas because I
Right.
didn't draw a D react, and then we will have the exchange back and forth.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the dichotomy, I guess, between Katsu and Fi in that matchup, just because 3 blocks are better, but the deck kind of plays a little bit less explosive but more streamlined, I guess. Whereas Fi is just like kind of hard pressed to bring sinks in and pray.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whereas Flick Flag is a hell of a drug. Like that,
yeah,
that thing can do very good things for you.
beautiful card. Love it.
So those were like the main matchups that I kind of had in mind. Was there anything else you saw at the calling or the pro tour that you kind of want to talk about as far as a matchup that maybe you prepped for and maybe the prep did really well or not very well or something you learned specifically
Yeah.
from that match?
Or
Let me
anything
take out
that
my
like surprised you?
notes here.
Hmm.
I know we haven't mentioned the Rune Blades much. Briar, Viscerai. I don't know if those
Mm.
popped up in any kind of capacity.
I played a Viscerai. I won the die roll. And he pushed through 10 damage over my full blocks. I started that game at 30 life.
Wow.
I
Do
got
you, do you run the flippers or
yeah,
you
yeah,
just
Tide,
resisting?
yeah, Tide Flippers really
Yeah.
kept me in that game. Sorry,
Okay.
just finding my notes here.
Wow. Yeah. I can't even imagine what you could have done to you on a 4 card hand going first. Like, was it like a?
Re- Re-
Okay.
Revel and Runeblood
It
is a
was
lot.
Revel. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah, blue, mauve, shrill, rebel,
Yeah.
Rosetta. That's like the best
Exactly. Well,
card opener.
That
Yeah,
makes
okay. I
sense.
was like
Yeah.
red shirt. That's like the best thing I can think of. But
Right. Right.
I'm
yeah,
not a big Viscerai player myself.
Yeah. And if you don't draw the blues to block rune chance, right, then you just kind of
Yeah, then you're doomed.
The damage just seeps through.
mhm. Yeah, I think the only other outlier I ran into was a single Icelander.
Where'd that go? I
Mm.
forgot about. It's funny how I just forgot about Icelander
Yeah.
after all the changes we've gone because Icelander just kind of gets eaten by like essentially the top 3 decks.
Yeah.
Not eaten, and then Azalea obviously. So
Yeah.
it's not. It wasn't a great event to bring Icelander to, but well, I guess
Yeah.
I'm talking about the PT specifically. The calling people just bring whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
But how was
Yeah,
that?
that guy was the Icelander was one of my friends from Seattle. Really good player. He knows that this is like kind of a doomed matchup for him. But a lot went right for him, and he played the game perfectly. I don't think any more preparation would have helped me for that matchup. I did play a lot of Icelander. I know what threats I need to respect,
Mhm.
and it's just like when you're under CLF for 4 or 5 turns forever. It's like those games are. Yeah, you can be as favored as you want, but like how many turns can you really just let them have the wheel?
Yep. No, that makes sense. Okay. Was there any kind of closing statements you have about kind of the deck itself? Playing the decks for someone who's like watching this deck tech, maybe they have practice, like a little bit of practice here and there with an aggro deck. Maybe they're a 5 player. Maybe they're just like kind of chilling. They want to bring some deck into RTNCC season. What's your short form summary for this deck?
Learning how to place your Kodachis on the chain is essential. I think it is one of the best ways you generate free value with this deck by threatening mask triggers where people aren't ready for them. Because, like, let's say I go spinning wheel kick, Kodachi, surging strike. Okay, they have to block the surging strike, and then we go further down the train, and then I go like they have to block the whelming gust wave, and then I go bonds of ancestry, Kodachi, finisher. That's like, that's like a 5-card hand, but it's like we spread their blocks like way thinner. Like we presented like a full extra mask threat on cards that don't already have mask threats.
Right.
And he explodes for that. So that's like one of the reasons Tunic is really sick, because it gives you a lot more freedom with how you set up. I think it is one of the most like mechanically interesting parts of the deck. Being able to structure your combat chain. If I'm to plug myself, I actually wrote an article on Wraith Times, Death by 1,000 Cuts. You should check it out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a link in the description for that
one. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, fair enough. Pleasure having you back on the channel. I knew this would be a interesting deck to talk about. I wouldn't want to bore everyone with more Lexi Draw My Oldham. It's pretty much all everyone's talking about for the next like month or two until dusk till dawn till whatever.
Yep.
The next set, right?
Yeah.
And I like Katsu quite a bit myself. Played on the channel a bit, so I was interested to a little personal bias.
Yeah.
I was interested in bringing
And
someone who has like a Katsu deck on here. But pleasure having you on. Congratulations for the calling. Even the PT run, you're still X3. It's not nothing to. I know plenty of. I was about to say professional. Plenty of people who take the game very seriously who did not X3. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
And that's
Still
just like it
feat.
happens.
If you go through those standings and look at the people that went like X3 drop at the Pro Tour, it's like
It's quite a few.
Pretty wild.
It's a bloodbath. Like,
yeah.
very, very good players coming to the only PT here. But congratulations obviously on the X4 calling. Very, very good result there. Yeah. And with that, do you have anyone you want to any shout outs? Anyone you want to thank for you've obviously been brewing / testing for the last couple months, so maybe a shout out or something.
I want to thank my friends in my local scene, Ian Smith, Eric Keelback, Eli T, Kevin Ho, Augustine Shim, Darka, we didn't see you, we miss you. They give me bits of feedback, keep me sane, keep me off my worst ideas. There was almost a double strike in this list.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see that double strike instead of the hurl or something just coming in there. Immense value, mass triggers.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's about it.
Well, appreciate your time, Rob. Always appreciate your time. That's always late for you. But with that,
I'm yawning every 2 minutes.
Yawning every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
If you like this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. We will have that link to the Wraith Times article in the description if you want to check out some more Clay content. If you're a Clay fan, you can check out that content there. And from wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.